All right, I think we left off. We had an abrupt stop there. We were talking about Keyshawn Vaughn Vanderbilt, how he came out of Tennessee as Mr. Tennessee from high school, went to the Big Ten, and Illinois is fighting Illini, set some records there, transfers over to Vanderbilt.
Comes back home. He's kind of an interesting one. A little bit of a dark horse for the SEC for the best running back coming into the year.
Yes, we talked a lot about him.
Yep.
He's the guy's. If you look at him physically, he's freakish and maybe not quite to a Saquon level, but his legs are just tree trunks. He was a sprinter in high school, so he's real. He knows how to get straight line speed going real fast and be consistent. His lateral agility in tight spaces is real good. I've seen him have patience in zone blocking schemes where he's had to find that hole. I mean, I think DeAndre Swift is probably the best of these guys, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this Vaughn kid. You talk about Edwards-Helaire, or that's not a guy necessarily you're going to draft to be a three-down back or a starter, especially out the gates. It'd be a development. Vaughn's a guy I could see that could.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, this is probably what has moved the needle away from him in 2019. He in 2018 ran for 157 times for 1,244 yards. That's almost 8 yards a clip, and he had 12 touchdowns. In 2019, again, getting a little bit more recognition in a dark horse, he went 198 for 1,028 yards. That's a 5.2 yard average. But he only scored 9 touchdowns this year. Had a long one of 75 yards, 78 the year before, so he can break them.
That's what I said. He's a sprinter. Once he gets that straight line, he can hit the home run if he gets that space.
Was a little more active in the passing game as far as catches. His catch per or his yards per catch went down to about 9.9 from 13.1 the year before, and only scored a touchdown. Now here's the part that's going to be the challenge: this is just a reality of Vanderbilt football. I mean, they are they're one of the they're like the Duke of the 90s of the ACC. They're the afterthought of them. So of the league. So you just never know. It's not like they're getting high.
The reality is Illinois is for the Big Ten too. I mean, when he was at Illinois, I mean, he did great, but they are not the best team in that conference by any means. They're towards the bottom.
And his statistics were better as a whole at Vanderbilt than they were at Illinois. So, I mean, he definitely trended upward in that sense. But he also became the focal point of the offense from the eyes of the teams that came and played him. And the truth is, Vanderbilt is an education school. It is the highest level education school they have in the SEC by a country mile. Their standards for allowing athletes to play are different. They just are. You can call it what you want. So here's the point.
Well, the positive there is that you got a smart kid on your hands because they're not going to let any dummy in there. So, I mean, he's a pretty bright guy.
This is one of those guys where I've said the second, third, fourth rounds of running backs could be really, really impressive this year. And this is a guy that could surprise, especially out of this conference, because of his skill set, because of his intelligence, but also because he did perform. I mean, 5 yards a carry, even in college football, is good.
Yeah,
we're talking about
it's more.
Back.
Yeah, I mean, he's not like we talked about those other guys. I don't know that he's as quick and jump cutty as these guys. He's again legs like tree trunks, man. The guy is a horse, so he's a power back. So though he did in a zone blocking scheme, I've seen him make some plays with his vision, get the right hole and get going. He does use that power in his legs. The vision could still need a little work if he's not in a scheme that is zone blocking. If it's a gap block scheme and he goes down a hole that's not there that he's supposed to, he's got to find the hole. And I don't want to say he plods with those big legs, but it definitely isn't as quick, and that's a weakness of his that he'll have to work on. If you can't try to outrace an NFL linebacker, let alone or lineman, DN, let alone a linebacker, let alone a safety to the edge. If you don't have speed, you can't just race him if you can't make that cut and get by. I don't know if he can do that, but that's something that he can be learned, I think.
Yeah, here's kind of this. I just pulled this up, and I'm not surprised because again, I watched him play a little bit. But this is from the NFL.com from the Combine. Just some of the comments on him. Obviously, we already mentioned he has NFL size and toughness. They do mention that his scheme and blocking up front was a kind of a benefactor to his success. So they do believe that his blocking was solid as far as in front of him. Interesting, I think you kind of alluded to this. He's tight-hipped runner who has issues with stop and start quickness and is unable to stack moves on top of moves. I'd say, based off my observation of him, there's a good amount of accuracy to that. Like,
yeah,
he's not the guy that you're going to see wiggle left, wiggle
That's
right,
what I said.
wiggle.
He's not. It's not the quickness that this guy brings, like a DeAndre Swift, where it's he can juke, and then get right back up to speed, or even with the jump cuts. He's got power, is what this kid has.
They give him an NFL comparison to Jamal Williams. I'm not sure I would go there as an NFL comparison.
No.
But they just said it's a backup, which again, when you're getting into the third and fourth rounds, that's probably what you're looking for, and certainly hoping that you catch better than that. So, and not catch physically, but catch meaning you do a little more than that. So,
all right, let's run through. Those are the top 3 running backs out of the SEC for the draft.
I think you get a gap after that.
Yeah. Now with let's just touch on a couple others. Let's go first to let's go South Carolina boys back to back.
Okay.
I had dropped Tavian's stuff again. He used to play for Clemson, grad transfer. He's a senior. He's from Spartanburg, 6 foot 221, and then his counterpart Rico Dowdle, also a senior from Asheville, North Carolina. He's 6 foot 215.
Yeah. Now, understand. We'll start with Tavian Feaster. I've watched him obviously because he's played at Clemson, and you've watched him extensively since you are a Clemson grad. He got pushed out of a backfield, understandably so. If there was a guy that, if he would have come out this year, that's going to compete with DeAndre Swift for first-round status and number 1 running back taken, it's, in my opinion, is Travis Etienne. He decided to stay, which sucks.
Yay!
For Florida State. Anyway, I think he's got that kind of skill. So, you have to take the fact that he transferred and went to South Carolina with a little bit of grain of salt. He wanted playing time. But I think you did see at South Carolina that, there are flaws in his game. There are things that I don't think that he can do. He's an effective back, but he's not a game-changing back to me.
No, he did come out of high school out of Spartanburg, and he was, I don't know if he was Mr. South Carolina, but he was the number 1 running back. He was highly recruited because he has moves in the open field. He's fast, but he's not lightning fast, deceptively fast, especially when he gets going. And he's got power. I mean, he's 221, 6 foot back.
Yep.
But yes, there were other stars that shined brighter than him in our backfield in Clemson, unfortunately. I saw some great things out of Feast. He did some great things for us, and when he was there with both Gallman and then with Etienne, and shared time for a while till it got to the point those boys took over the backfield, and he was really not doing much at all, spelling once in a while, but he was still involved. Like, he always saw the field. I mean, in 2016, 37 rushing attempts. In 2017, he had 107 rushing attempts. 2018, 78, and then last year at South Carolina, $124. So he saw the field, but I agree. I don't think he's a game-changing back. I think when we recruited him, we kind of thought he might be one of those guys, having got game changers like a C.J. Spiller and so forth. Like I said before, there were other stars that ended up shining brighter than he, but he was very effective.
Yeah, I don't see him as, he's not a vision back to me, and he's not a wiggle back. He's the kind of guy I could see probably taken as an undrafted free agent, maybe be a good special teams guy, be a physical guy. That can I think we're gonna say that about several of these guys.
Yeah. So what about Dowdle? I kind of 6 foot 215. He's another guy that this backfield was it did South Carolina's backfield the during his tenure, because he is a senior, never really had, I think, what we had. And, I'm not just pumping out the chest, but like that bright shining star, that it was definitely hands down better than most. But I got to turn myself down is what I got to do. I think I'm blowing your eardrums. But what I do think is that, there was other guys there that definitely saw a lot of run with him. He didn't take the reins. He didn't take the opportunity to, whereas Feast kind of just got, unfortunately, mixed in with some phenomenal talent. I don't necessarily think there was phenomenal talent during his tenure at South Carolina. He just didn't take the opportunity that he was given to take the lead.
Yeah, I mean, and the whole thing is you get to a level of competition, and some people's bodies and skill sets develop at different times, and it was probably a guy that was relatively capped early in his career as far as his skill level growth. And I think that's kind of where I see. I can be honest with you, I see the rest of these backs we talk about.
Let's just talk
probably
about
being there.
Harrion. I think we touched on a little bit. He was at the University of Georgia. He's a senior, 6', 210 from Douglasville. He very similar to Feaster. He was in a backfield with much better backs. I think when he came in, there was a lot of expectation, but they're a factory there. So we said that before. He did get, from 2016 getting 63 carries to last year to having 103, he got run, and he was, for the most part, he had some injury here and there, but nothing too much. He played most seasons.
I think most about him that, again, I kind of see him as probably like an undrafted free agent type of guy, or a very, very late round. But here's the thing about him is, the thing I saw about him several times in watching the Georgia games this year was his willingness to kind of do whatever they needed. He lined up in a lot of different roles. But yeah, he could be the kind of guy, again, I go back to that special teams, maybe like a third back that comes in and is maybe not, you're not talking about a guy that's going to go spell for a series, but has a set of plays that he comes into. Maybe he comes out and is able to line up in like either an H-back or line up as maybe in an emotion coming in and pulling in the slot.
Yeah.
And he's a taller guy, right? I think
6 foot.
Is that's it? I thought he was a little taller than that. But
6 foot.
6 foot. So, maybe you see him kind of play some of those roles, but, he's probably a fringe NFL player, maybe like a 4 or 5 year guy max.
Here's a guy I think that will get drafted, probably late, but, just this great segue from that, the guy that could maybe play an H-back role type thing, and that's LaMichael Purine from the University of Florida Gators, 5'11", 216, redshirt senior from Mobile, Alabama. That's a guy, like when you were saying those things about Harry, and I could see he could do all those same things, but he's a guy that I think will get drafted. It might be late, but I think he'll get drafted.
Yeah, I don't think that's unrealistic. Again, there is going to be a little bit of a love for Florida, just given some of their standing. Obviously, put up a better year.
Yeah.
They're one of those schools that people generally will take a little bit more of a chance on somebody that might be fringe, just knowing the type of programs they run, and that matters.
That guy was around Florida for the past several years. There was a lot of change of the guard there from the staff, and he always seemed to be, again, very coachable. It seemed like he was willing to work hard. Didn't seem to have necessarily any phenomenal games, but didn't necessarily have awful games. So, I mean, he had his ups and downs, but maybe that's mediocrity, but he's consistent.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. And then the last guy we do want to touch on, last running back in the SEC that'll be out here is Scotty Phillips from the Ole Miss Running Rebels, senior from Ellsville, Mississippi, 5'8", 211. Looks like, he got a lot of run the past couple of years, but looks like for the most part, 2018, 2019, he carried a lot of the load for Ole Miss. He had 153 in 18, 125 attempts in 19. It's important to me that when you see these running backs, TDs do matter a lot to me. Yep. Okay, as they not that they
can
but
they seal the deal and finish?
Yeah, do they have a nose for the end zone? Okay, you learn that if you play football from a very young age. If you're a running back, does this kid have a nose for the end zone? Can he find the end zone?
Yep.
And both years he has a combined 3 touchdowns. Those things jump off the page at me when I'm looking at a lower tiered guy. Again, he was in a program that was in a lot of turmoil.
Yeah.
More so than Florida. They weren't necessarily in turmoil. It was more of changing of staffs and coaching. But they didn't just have that at Ole Miss. They had the whole nonsense still lingering from the Freeze, Mr. Freeze.
He did also in 2019 have a lot of injury issues. This was a kid that came out of the JUCO ranks after a couple years and was very very productive in the JUCO ranks.
That.
Yeah, and so when he came in, his first year, as a playmaker in Ole Miss. But again, I think that's going to be the challenge. And this is the kind of thing that talking about this coronavirus and just the lack of opportunities to show yourself in front of NFL staffs prior to the draft. This is a guy that's probably going to get hurt by that, given the injuries. But it's this, with the turmoil that's there, there's going to be a concern. And, a lot of these. I've seen lots of scouts and lots of player personnel departments in the NFL talk about this, that one of the biggest things for them is the interviewing.
Yeah.
Like that is game changing for them. And you've heard all the crazy questions like,
especially
have you ever worn a woman's pink dress kind of garbage?
Yeah.
But the reality is they weight those, and the combine ones are 15-minute interviews. That's the problem with the combine. That's why they like the pro days, because they can sit down, they can take these guys to dinner, have like 2-hour, 3-hour conversations with them. That's probably not happening. And this is a guy that, because of those injuries and because of the JUCO time,
it's going to hurt his draft stock.
Yeah, his draft stock is definitely going to get hurt to the point where I don't know that someone's going to take a chance on him.
And we've said it over again in all of the casts talking about the draft. This class, we believe, is very deep at running back. We might not have gone into a bunch of them here or even the ACC. We still have 3 more Power 5 conferences, and I could tell you there's several in there that are huge
There's
names.
some ponies out there.
So, this guy isn't a huge name, and because people may get their fill of running backs with all these others that are out there prior to, and he may end up being a victim of the unrestricted free agent world. I don't know.
Yeah.
If he's lucky, even. I don't want to say victim. Like, if you get picked up, you're lucky.
I do want to say this, and just kind of makes like a good timing for it, but it's going to be true about everything. I'm going to really feel for this graduating class, and the reason why is, if, and this is a possibility, but if training camps are affected, the real challenge is going to be the amount of exposure, not just on the front end of the draft, but even in the undrafted status. Are you going to get enough reps? Because here's going to be the other problem is, and people need to think about this. Even if the NFL draft, even if the training camp is not impacted, last year we saw incredible levels of starters not playing at all or 20 snaps
in the preseason.
Yep. Well, now understand, all these teams are losing their camps.
Yep.
So the starters are going to get way more time,
and that's
going to hurt these guys.
Risks. They become injury risks earlier on too.
Yeah. So there's
a whole other world.
There's going to be a chaos that we're going to deal with, and unfortunately, I think this particular draft class, particularly the undrafted free agents or the guys that just don't have enough tape, are really going to suffer for this. And, I'm not saying this specifically is the guy, but this is a good example of somebody that may really suffer from it and may end up with no NFL career because of it. Not saying he deserves it, but it might be just he missed his window.
Crazy time, my friend. But that wraps running backs for the Southeastern Conference in this year's 2020 NFL Draft. And we will see you next time, as always,
on the gridiron.
Peace.